Hello, and good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this special interview with A Mighty Blaze. I am Margaret Pinard, a historical fiction and spec fic author, and we're here to interview two lovely people. We get two for one with this book because it is translated literature. Welcome to the HYUNAM-DONG Bookshop, and it's by Hwang Bo-reum, and it's translated by Shanna Tan. So we have both of them here tonight. For me, it's tonight, to talk about this lovely book, For a Mighty Blaze. So if you don't know, A Mighty Blaze is an organization of about 35 volunteers that has been going for 4 years. We just had our 4th birthday, and we volunteer to help authors launch their books during uncertain quarantine, terrible times, and beyond. So hopefully we're helping connect authors and readers with great books from now until eternity. So thank you for joining us. And like and subscribe for more blazing goodness. So tonight we're going to talk about this. We have it categorized as literary fiction, but it does a lot of work under that category. So let me first introduce our lovely guests here, and then we'll explain how the translation and interpretation for this live interview will be rolling out, because this is the first time we've ever done this. So thank you for bearing with me sort of stumbling along. Hwang Bo-reum studied computer science and worked as a software engineer. She wrote several essay collections. I read every day. I tried kickboxing for the first time, and This Distance is Perfect. Welcome to the HYUNAM-DONG Bookshop is her first novel, which has sold over 150,000 copies in Korea and has been sold into 9 territories. Shanna Tan is a Singaporean translator working from Korean, Chinese, and Japanese into English. She was selected for 2 emerging literary translator mentorships in 2022, where she was mentored by Anton Her and Julia Sanchez. Her prose translations have appeared in the Southern Review, The Common Azalea, Journal of Korean Literature and Culture, and more. So we're very excited to have both of these lovely book people to talk about a book tonight. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Margaret. We are very happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. So what we're going to do is ask some of the questions. Shanna will be interpreting. Shanna and Bo-reum will both be answering some questions and then interpreting back for our mostly English-speaking audience. But who knows? We could have Korean speakers on the channel as well. So the premise of the book, very bare bones, is a woman in middle age opening a bookshop in a Seoul neighborhood. And she meets very interesting characters. She learns lots of lessons from her experiences running this bookshop. And we see those lessons and stories unfold through the action. What we're very curious about is how much of the writer's experience is paralleled in the story, how much of this is similar. Because I see that there's a writer in the story who wins a contest, who approaches writing analytically and effortlessly curates an Instagram feed, and that's the bookshop owner. These things bear a certain resemblance to Bo-reum's experiences. So can I ask that first?
네, so 이 책에 등장하는 인물의 경험이 작가님의 경험과 얼마나 유사하나요? 그 컨테스트에서 우승하고 분석적으로 글쓰기에 접근하고 또 뭐 인스타그램 피드를 손쉽게 큐레이션도 하고 그 등의 경험이 포함됩니다. 어떻게 생각하시나요, 작가님?
우선 그냥 제 작가 경험만 얘기를 하자면 제가 작가였던 경험이 이 소설 안에서는 영주와 승우 에피소드에 많이 녹아 있어요. 영주 같은 경우에는 서점을 열고 나서 글을 쓰기 시작한 사람이고 처음에는 이제 블로그에 글을 쓰다가 나중에 칼럼도 쓰게 되잖아요. 근데 그때 영주가 칼럼을 쓸 때 가장 두려워했던 게 이게 과연 괜찮은 글인가? 였고, 그래서 승우에게 보여주고 나서 굉장히 이제 긴장을 했었잖아요. 이런 경험은 저도 처음에 이제 글을 쓸 때 내 글이 누구한테 보여줄 만한 글인가? 라는 그런 생각을 많이 했었던 터라 이 경험이 들어갔습니다. 그래서 여기서 끊고 통역해 주시게 될 것 같아요.
Yes, so I put in my own experiences as an author in the episodes between Yeongju and Seung-woo, who is the writer in the novel. So Yeongju, after she kind of like opened the bookshop, she started writing a blog, and she also writes like a newspaper column. And she was very nervous to show her writing to Seung-woo, who is like, a professional writer. So, and the difficulties that Yeongju faced as a new writer was the same one that I had faced myself when I started writing. And so I was afraid and also had doubts whether people would read or enjoy my writing.
그리고 승우 같은 경우는 저는 30살 넘어서 처음 글을 쓰기 시작했거든요. 그리고 주변에 글을 쓰는 사람이 아무도 없었고, 그리고 누구한테 물어볼 수도 없었고, 그래서 제가 책을 읽으면서 어떻게 써야 하는지를 배웠어요. 근데 그런 책들 보면 이제 한국어 문법에 대한 책이거나 아니면 좋은 문장이 무엇인지 또는 잘못된 문장이 뭔지 설명해주는 그런 책들을 읽으면서 저도 공부를 했거든요. 그래서 처음에 글을 쓸 때는 보통 출판사에서 편집자 분들이 하시거나 아니면 교정교육자 분들이 하시는 일이 있거든요. 그 문장을 다듬는 일을. 그래서 제가 그때 한참 공부할 땐 나도 교정교육자가 한번 돼볼까라는 생각을 할 정도로 했었는데 하다 보니까 너무 깊더라고요. 그 세계가. 그래서 저는 중간에 포기했지만 승우는 계속 나아가서 어떤 문장 전문가가 되었죠. 이것도 제 경험이 조금 들어간 거긴 해요.
Yeah, so I started writing after I was 30. So at that point in time, nobody around me is a writer. Nobody writes. So I have no one to ask. And so what I did was that I did a lot of like research on my own. I read books about how to write Korean grammar, what makes a good sentence. And, when it comes to writing, there is also the editing bit. And as I was studying about, Korean grammar and everything, I was thinking, oh, should I become an editor? But in the end, as I kind of like looked at, trying to study a little bit more, and it feels like, wow, this is a very, very like, it's a very deep and a very like new industry also. And that's why in the end, Sue in the story had a better and a more excellent command of Korean language and grammar than me. So in the end, I decided that, no, I'm not going to do editing. I'm just going to write.
Okay. I love that. Okay, so you started with your story and then edged it a little here and did a little here and sort of made it fit a more illustrative example. I like that. We've got another piece to that puzzle, which was how much of the story was drawn from observations of Seoul's community life, because a lot of the charm and the daily life or slice of life pieces are foreign, and they're sort of feeding us images of Seoul community life, neighborhood life. So how much of that was drawn from real life, and not needing to name any names, but
So 이 작품을 쓰게 하는 그런 영감이 무엇인지, 또 얼마만큼은 작가님이 그냥 일상생활에서 아니면은 서울에서 그냥 진짜 있는 그런 일상생활을 반영되었나요?
처음에 이 소설을 영감인가요? 계기인가요? 소설을 쓴 계기 아니면
inspiration of how like why she started writing, or more of like why did she want to write this novel?
Yeah, that's interesting as well. I was asking more about like the neighborhoods or the communities forming that she has observed, like the coffee people and the book people, or the parents going to bookshops, or the sort of lives intertwining. Is that something she observed as well to put in the book, or is that more pure? Like, yeah.
약간 거기 소설에서 또 뭐 그냥 서점에 가면은 또 그 사장님과 그 커스터머들이 약간 좀 관계를 맺었잖아요. 그래서 이것도 사실 뭐 생활에서 그런 거 직접 봤어요? 아니면은 그냥 그렇게 생각하고 또 쓰는 거예요?
그러니까 이 소설을 쓸 때, 그러니까 저도 제가 생각했던 어떤 공동체 이상향? 판타지 같은 게 있었어요. 그러니까 저도 제 생활에서 많이 겪지 못했던 걸 어떻게 보면 이 소설 안에서 좀 구현하려고 했던 것도 있거든요. 근데 또 제 경험이 또 드러난 게 뭐냐면, 이 소설에서 보면은 뭐 영주와 다른 뭐 단골 손님이나 거기 자주 오시는 분들 대화를 나누잖아요. 제가 가장 이 소설을 쓰면서 가장 보고 싶었던 게 그 인물들이 대화를 나누는 거였어요. 그러니까 번역가 수다와 대화가 구별이 저는 했거든요. 그래서 수다 같은 경우에는 우리 그냥 맨날 수다 떨잖아요. 근데 제가 원했던 대화는 우리가 아무리 친한 친구, 20년, 30년 지기 친구와도 쉽게 할 수 없는 대화. 그러니까 뭐 예를 들면 이 소설 안에서라고 하면 너는 삶의 의미가 있는 것 같니? 또는 꿈은 이렇게 쏟는 게 좋을까, 안 쏟는 게 좋을까 같은 그런 걸 묻고 대답하는 이런 대화를 많이 넣고 싶었는데 그 이유가 이렇게 다른 나라 문화에서는 모르겠는데 한국에서는 이런 대화를 나누기가 쉽지가 않거든요. 어느 관계에서든 어느 장소에서든 이제 이 휴남동 서점에서 그런 대화 나누는 모습을 보고 싶었습니다.
Yeah, so it's not exactly that, you know, in the Seoul community life that people do really kind of have that kind of interactions in the bookshop. Yeah, so to her, it's more of like what she hoped to see and a little bit of like an ideal situation. So, you know, and a lot of times, like, we talk about conversations, but that also is differentiated from small talk. I mean, like if you go to a shop, there can possibly, you know, have small talk between like the boss and like the customers, but not really in-depth conversation. And these are like in the HYUNAM-DONG bookshop novel, they have a lot of conversations whereby even if you're friends for like 20 or 30 years, you don't really talk about these topics very easily. So these topics include things like dreams, happiness, career choices, and, you know, how to live. Yeah, so it's actually kind of difficult to talk about it, even with good friends. So she wants to write a book that, you know, talks about all this in-depth conversation. And not sure about the culture in other places, but at least in Korea, it is really not easy to talk about these topics. And hence, she wants to write them in her book.
I love that. Yes, yes, that's very true here as well. It almost makes me think of The Little Prince and how he asks the most penetrating questions or makes the most poignant comments, and they're so pure. It's that idyllic wanting to connect with someone through real talk rather than small talk. Yeah, that's really important. We had a friend come on, and Beth Ann, another booktuber, says, I'm so excited about this book. Bought it for my mom's birthday. Another friend, we've got Leslie helping here as well, said she listened to the audiobook version and enjoyed the depth of character and contemplation. And yeah, that also brings to mind Where Do You Live, which is a classic Japanese, like 1940s novel, I think, that I read for a readathon, examining those deeper questions. It's really important. I've got another question about coffee. So it is a book about bookshops and books and life with books, but we've also got a strong character who works with coffee, and that is his medium through which he learns the lessons of his story in the novel. So I do not know much about coffee. I'm a tea person. So did you have to also do coffee research for this novel about books, or are you also a coffee purist?
그 소설 속에서 그 등장하는 인물이 민준 있잖아요. 그럼 민준은 커피 바리스타인데, 그래서 마글님이 커피에 대해 잘 모르시고 그냥 양장 좀 차 마시는 분인데요. 그래서 작가님은 어떠신가요? 또는 약간 이 책을 쓸 때 좀 연구, 리서치 같은 거는 좀 많이 해야 했나요?
저도 정말 커피 모르고요. 그냥 그 커피숍 가서 아메리카노 한 잔 주세요 정도밖에 말하는 그 정도밖에 모르는 사람이고, 그래서 이 소설을 쓸 때 커피에 대한 부분은 소설을 쓰면서 책을 읽었어요. 커피에 관련된 책을. 그래서 책에서 자료조사를 해서, 책을 통해 자료조사를 해서 이 안에 이제 넣을 수 있었고요. 그래도 하루에 한두 잔 저는 커피 마셨었거든요. 근데 최근에 한 작년부터는 아침에 커피를 마셔도 밤에 잠을 못 자요. 카페인이 들어간 차도 못 마셔요. 그래서 요즘에는 이런 디카페인 차를 마시고 있습니다.
Yeah, so I don't really know much about coffee. So if I go to a cafe, usually what I do is to just ask for an iced Americano, like the basic drink. And so what I do
Okay.
is that I read a lot about coffee through books, and I did my research from there. And from what I read and what I learn, I kind of integrate that into the writing. And so, but even then, I do drink coffee about like 1 or 2 cups a day. But sadly, some time ago, I ended up not being able to finish a coffee even if I drink it in the morning because I will not be able to sleep at night. And also
No.
caffeinated like teas, it's also a little bit difficult for me. So these days, if I want a coffee, I kind of drink like decaffeine instead.
Got it. Decaf. Aging.
에이징.
Yes, yes.
네.
Oh, that's lovely. Let's see. We had some questions about the audiobook narrator, so I'll let Leslie take care of that if she is able. I was going to ask Shanna a question, shake it up a little bit. So when I followed your social media, it asked, I think you said very clearly that this was the first time you had done it, because one of my questions was, have you translated other works like this before? And then, of course, I saw the answer on your social media. If you want to follow Instagram, we've got their Instagram handles. But I also wanted to ask now with this experience, do you have opinions about which genres lend themselves most easily to translation? Were there any special issues with this type of book that maybe the very plain speaking was hard to translate, or what did you come across that seemed like a special challenge?
Yeah, so indeed, this is my first published full-length translation, although at this point I have translated other books that will be forthcoming this year or the next. And
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, so as to what genres lend themselves most easily to translation, I feel that with translation, everything can be translated. At the same time, everything cannot be translated exactly as it was in the source text. So I would say that, well, that is quite a difficult question to answer. I would say that everything can be translated. But when it comes to what elements can translate well, I think that this book, a lot of the themes that's touched on are quite universal, like our anxiety about career, about success, what makes us happy, and how do we live. And I think this is the reason why a lot of the readers are loving this book, because they do find themselves in it and they can relate to what the themes are. And as to the textual translation, I wanted to keep the Korean vibes in the story. So because the story was very much about the very calm and heartwarming vibes of a Korean bookshop and a cafe. And this is why I kind of kept some words in Korean to kind of keep to that to keep true to the story. And also I like to make the readers work a little harder, because
That's
in the
good.
end,
Yeah.
translated fiction, so you are kind of like reading something that is unfamiliar in the first place. And I think it is good that readers kind of get a little glimpse of like Korean culture, of like the Korean language through this book. And that's why I keep some words in it, especially kinship terms. So for example, things like me, which is like how do you call an older sister or an older woman, to express some kind of like, yeah, that's how you call them. So I think I will keep that inside. But I make sure that every time I keep a Korean word that is very easily Googleable, like you can just Google it.
Okay. Yeah.
Myself too. So in the end, I hope that will keep that vibes of the story, the Korean vibes.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Yeah, we were just talking about cultural mindsets that might be hidden in language or vice versa. yesterday in another literary fiction interview and thinking about how there are words for on your left, on your right in English, but in this certain indigenous language in Australia, there was no left to right because that is with the person as the center and their north is the center. So they would always know where north is and always orient towards north. And I was like, that's so fascinating. But you only get that when you're let into the secrets, you know, let into the mindset change. Yeah. I love it. Translated literature. Yes. Okay. So let's ask about the coziness, the heartwarming vibes that you're talking about. So, Bodum, we've sort of got a new trend in the US with cozy fantasy, cozy sci-fi, cozy murder books, what have you. Cozy is a thing right now. And so I think that books set in bookshops is a very well-loved cozy subgenre. Is that also true in Korea? Was that something you had reference books for, or how did you feel like your book would fit in with it? Was it new or was it fitting into a similar trend?
네, 요즘 약간 미국에서 또 그런 트렌드 있잖아요. 약간 따뜻한 장르, 약간 따뜻한 로맨스, 따뜻한 뭐 또 다른 장르도 있잖아요. 그래서 여기는 그 서점을 배경으로 한 책이라 좀 특샘 시장에서 데뷔작 쓰셨잖아요. 그래서 한국에서도 이 장르가 사랑받는 장르인가요?
최근 한 2년 정도 되는 것 같아요. 그러니까 한 2, 3년 정도 전부터 이런 소설이 한국에서도 각광을 받고 있는 것 같긴 해요. 근데 제가 이 소설은 2018년도에 썼거든요. 근데 제가 이 소설을 쓸 때는 우리나라에 이런 소설이 있는 줄 몰랐어요. 모르는 상태로 그냥 어차피 우리나라 한국 소설은 내가 읽고 싶은 이런 류의 소설이 없으니까 그냥 내가 쓰자라고 생각해서 썼었는데 이 책을 쓰고 나서 나중에야 서점이 배경인 소설도 있었다를 알게 되었고, 그리고 이 소설이 출판이 된 그 이유 중에 하나는 그 아까 제가 말씀드렸다시피 한 2, 3년 전부터 이런 따뜻한 소설을 찾는 사람들이 생겼고 그 덕에 저도 이 책을 출간하게 된 것이긴 해요. 근데 굉장히 최근의 일이에요, 한국 문학에선.
Yeah, so it's only in the last like 2 to 3 years that we have a rise in cozy fiction in Korea. But this novel, HYUNAM-DONG, was actually written in 2018. And back then, there wasn't really this cozy fiction genre. And there wasn't also, at least like not to me, I didn't know that we had any novels that was set in a bookshop. So I started writing this because I thought that, in Korea, there is no novel. There's nothing that I really want to read. So I can't find a story that I want to read. So to me, I will write it myself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Later that I got to know, actually there are also a few other novels in Korea that are set in the bookshop. And back then, how I got to publish this book was also because, as mentioned earlier, that 2 to 3 years ago, that there's a rise in cozy fiction. So publishers were also looking for such stories. And that was how I got this book published in Korea.
Nice. I love the world needs more cozy everything, Beth Ann says. Very true. Yes, set in a cozy bookshop. Just in case anyone is coming in at the moment, we are having a lovely interview with the author Hwang Bo-reum and the translator Shanna Tan of Welcome to the HYUNAM-DONG Bookshop. And it's a book translated from Korean, so we've got the author and translator here interpreting for us to talk about the book tonight. I've got another question, which is about one of the things that struck me most and resonated with me most, having to do with passion for your job or your career. And one of the characters mentions the struggle to have something you're passionate about also be a business. And so for bookshop owners, some of whom I know well and love, they're generally readers. and this is definitely the case, that they love books, they read books, they own a bookshop because they want to do more with books in their life. But I'm also thinking of authors like myself who need to market their books and get into the business side of becoming an indie author or getting involved with just other marketing efforts for their books, which is the business side. So if Youngju could give a piece of advice to those passionate people, what might it be to not lose the passion while getting into the business side?
네, 그래서 휴남동 책방에서 가장 공감이 갔던 주제 중 하나는 약간 자신이 열정을 쏟는 그런 일을 사업으로도 이어가기 위한 그런 고군분투였잖아요. 그래서 일반적으로 독자인 책방 주인들도 그렇지만 책을 마케팅해야 하는 작가들도 마찬가지일 거라고 생각해요. 그래서 그런 열정적인 분들에게 영주가 조언을 해준다면은 어떤 것이 있을까요?
우선 제가 영주가 아니긴 한데 그래도 영주라면 영주도 계속 이 소설 안에서 고민하잖아요. 어떻게 하면 이 서점을 자리 잡게 할 수 있을까? 근데 찾은 답은 결국 자기 안에서 찾았어요. 그래서 심지어 그 휴남도 서점에서는 베스트셀러를 아예 배제하는 식으로 이 큐레이팅을 하잖아요. 저는 결국은 이 세상이 어떻게 흘러가는지를 우리가 매 순간 이렇게 따라갈 수도 없고 또 이거 캐치할 수 없잖아요. 그래서 내 안에서 답을 찾는 수밖에 없는 것 같아요. 그게 뭐 동네 서점 대표님이든 작가님이든. 그래서 동네 서점 우선 여기까지만 할까요?
아니, 괜찮아요.
예. 그래서 동네 서점 대표님들도 가장 신경 쓰시고 또 중요하게 생각하는 게 어떤 책을 들여놓을지잖아요, 책방에. 근데 그때 결국 기준으로 삼아야 할 건 내가 어떤 책을 좋아하는지 그리고 어떤 책을 사람들에게 소개해주고 싶은지여야 할 것 같아요. 왜냐면 다른 사람들이 많이 읽는 책을 들여놓으면 결국 그 서점에는 대형 서점 베스트셀러 섹션을 그대로 옮겨온 것밖에 되지 않아서 독자들이 그 서점에 갈 이유가 없어지잖아요. 그래서 자신은 없어도 과연 이 책을 사람들이 좋아해 주실까 자신은 없어도 내 기준에 맞게 그 서점을 꾸리는 게 중요한 것 같고 작가 또한 요즘 독자님들은 어떤 글을 좋아할까라고 고민을 하기보단 그거는 뭐 출판사 마케팅 분들이 하시는 거고 작가도 결국은 내가 어떤 책을 쓰고 싶은지를 알고 그냥 그걸 따라야 할 것 같고요. 그리고 저는 제가 글을 쓰면서 느끼는 게 내가 쓰는 글이 나한테도 재미있어야지만 잘 써지더라고요. 그래서 내가 읽고 좋은 글을 쓸 수밖에 없는 것 같아요, 작가도.
So first, I'm not Youngju, but so it's a bit hard for me to answer this. But I would say that Youngju, she found the answer in herself. Yes. So there are just so many trends in the world. We can't just follow whatever is ongoing in the world. So we have to look within ourselves. So for example, when we talk about booksellers, bookshop owners, I think what they're most concerned about will be, what books to carry in the bookshop. But in the end, what's most important is their own passion, their own interest. What do I want to stock and what do I want to put out for the readers? And if they only stock books that people are already aware of, then isn't that just having the bestseller section of big chain bookshops in my store? So that's the only thing that you would see. And then why would people visit such a bookshop? So even if I was a bookseller, even if I'm not sure whether the readers will like what I choose, I should do according to what I feel is correct and what I think will be interesting. So it's the same with authors. So instead of asking what do the readers want to read? That is probably a question that the publisher or the marketing people have to think about. But as an author, I would want to write what I want to read. So first, I must also enjoy the writing process. And that is why I would say that, yes, we have to look within ourselves.
Yeah. That's actually a Toni Morrison quote. So famous African-American author, I believe that's hers. It's that if you do not see the book you want to read, you must write it yourself. So that's a perfect example of that. And I did love that passage where you're explaining about the bestsellers. It's one of my tabbed pages about fighting for what you want rather than what everyone else wants. So I like that a lot. We do have about 5 minutes for audience questions. We had a great one from Robin Stoll, which is about writing routine. So I'll pop that up so Shanna can read it. What does your writing day look like? Is it a specific time each day? Is it paper and pen? Is it computer? From a computer scientist, I'm going to guess it's a computer. And is there a specific or favorite author who inspires you? That might be fun.
네, 그래서 일상생활에서 그 글 쓸 때 어떻게 그 시간을 어떻게 구분하나요? 약간 아침에만 쓰고 아니면 오후에만 쓰고 또는 약간 종이와 펜만 쓰시고 아니면 컴퓨터로 글을 쓰는가요? 아니면 또 어떤 약간 작가님 좋아하는 작가님은 그한테는 영감 받으셨는지.
저는 직장인 분들이 일하는 그 딱 시간 있잖아요. 오전부터 뭐 늦은 오후 정도? 그때 딱 글을 써요. 그래서 아침 10시부터 12시, 오후 2시부터 6시. 그리고 저녁 이후 되면 머리가 멍해져가지고 그때는 그냥 놀고요. 글을 쓸 때는 당연히 컴퓨터로 글을 쓰고요. 저 이 글씨 쓰는 거 너무 힘들어하고 어려워하고 잘 못 써요. 글씨가 되게 악필이에요. 그래서 최대한 제 손으로 글을 쓰는 일을 안 하려고 노력하고 있습니다.
Yeah. So I write during like an office hours. So for example, like 9 to 6. So I will write in the morning until lunchtime, and afterwards at 2, maybe 2 to 5, 2 to 6, then I will write in the afternoon. And I cannot write in the evening because like, my brain is just not working, and I would just like enjoy myself, enjoy the evening. And of course I would I'll type with the computer because I find that writing by hand is so difficult, and I have bad handwriting, so I try not to write by hand. So it's computer all the way.
All right. Excellent. I hope that answers your question, Robin. I had another thought on that question, and now did I just forget it? Maybe. We're asking about. Okay, JD says he also writes what he wants to read. Often he sees people taking all the feedback from critique and putting it in the story with no judgment, but people can be wrong. I think this gets back to our discussion about boundaries and, trusting the right people and making your own decisions and finding the answer in yourself. So yeah, thank you, JD. Nice to be here. See you. I think JD had a different question, which is interesting. There we go. What are some of the most interesting places where you've been read that surprised you? So sometimes if you've gone to libraries or classrooms or companies, people from different walks of life will have different interactions with your work, and they can be very surprising, not at all what you expected. So is there an interesting place where you've been read that surprised you?
Place, so not so much about the reader themselves, but where you have been read. Is that my understanding?
It could be a country, or it could be like I said, like a company. Because sometimes when you go to do a reading or do a talk, if Bo-reum has done those, you get different feedback or different experiences with the book. So either interpretation.
So 약간 독자님들도 많이 만났잖아요. 그래서 여기 뭐 서점에 가거나 또 뭐 어떤 행사에 가시거나도 독자님 만났을 때도 어떤 경험이 좀 약간 뜻밖의 그런 독자님을 만나 보셨나요? 또 어떤 뭐 약간 회사에 가거나 거기 회사에 있는 분들이 제 책을 읽었어요. 이거 어떻게 그런 제 책을 알게 되었나요? 뭐 그런 순간이 있었나요?
재밌었던 거 외국에 사는 저희 아빠 친구분이 외국에서 제 책을 정보를 알고 저희 아빠에게 뭐 연락을 해줬다? 같은 것이 우선 있었고, 좀 딱 생각나는 건 그거고, 독자를 만났을 때 되게 놀라웠던 거 말씀하시는 거죠.
네.
네. 사실 제가 북토크를 되게 많이 다녀가지고 그런 경험이 많긴 한데, 그럼 그 제 처음 경험으로 돌아가 보면 제가 이 소설을 내고 처음 오프라인 북토크를 했을 때 그때 독자분이 저는 독자를 처음 만나는 거였거든요, 그때. 근데 그 독자분이 이 소설 속 영주에 대한 이야기를 너무 깊고 풍부하게 저에게 질문을 해주셨어요. 그 영주를 너무나 깊이 이해하시고 나서. 근데 그 질문을 들었을 때 정말 머리끝에서 발끝까지 뭔가 이렇게 짜르르 약간 전율이 일었어요. 울컥했었어요. 누군가가 내가 쓴 이야기를 이렇게 진심을 다 읽어준 분이 있다라는 걸 그때 전 처음으로 눈앞에서 본 경험이어가지고 그게 기억에 남습니다.
Yes. So something interesting will probably be like my father's friend who lives overseas actually saw my book in the bookshop and kind of like talked to my dad about it. So that was like surprising. And also there was yeah, right. So there was also this bit about my first in-person talk as a writer, and this is the first time that I was like meeting my readers. And there was this person who came up to me and asked like such profound and deep questions about the book. It's like she connected with Yongju, the character, on such a deep level, and it just feels amazing. Like I feel like there's this cost of electricity in me, and it's like, oh, how can this one person have like such a deep understanding? And you read my book so in depth, and I felt so thankful for that.
That's really lovely. Yeah, JD's talking about how he had a reader from Nepal. You're like, how does this even happen in the world? That's great. So I'm going to conclude, since I know we have a tight time schedule, with a little quote and tell you why you should read this book. It's from about the middle, and it's different generations talking to each other about career goals and hopelessness and what you're working towards. When I was young, I thought that sacrificing myself and accommodating others was part of my duty. It's good to see the younger ones these days thinking differently. And the response is, well, it's not that we see things differently, but at least we need to see a glimmer of hope at the end of that sacrifice. But these days, there's not even a shred of hope. So we don't see a need to sacrifice anymore, the younger ones chimed in. The older lady was shocked. So you're having generations talking to each other about the meaning of life and the purpose of life and really opening up themselves. And that is the sort of ideal environment that Bo-reum has conjured for us in this book. Welcome to the HYUNAM-DONG Bookshop, translated by Shanna Tan. And I know that we don't have time for any more questions, but Page Turners with Katya has also read this book, and it is 3 a.m. for her, or almost 4. And she said, do you have plans for a sequel or any other projects to explore similar themes? And I really hope you do. So,
약간 2편을 쓸 생각 있으세요? 아니면은 또 뭐 다른 소설 쓰려고 하는데요? 아니면은 약간 좀 비슷한 소설을 쓸 생각 있으세요? 아니면
이 다음에요. 이
네,
다음에
네.
제가 이 소설을 내고 한 1년 반 정도는 이 질문을 진짜 많이 받았는데 그때는 또 쓰게 될지 모르겠다라고 했었는데 작년 말부터는 저도 쓰고 싶다라는 쪽으로 마음이 많이 기울었어요.
2편이요?
아니요. 2편이라기보다 소설을.
네.
그래서 쓰고 싶습니다. 우선은 지금 그런 마음이에요.
Okay, so I keep getting these questions for the past 1.5 years, and I keep saying no, but at the end of last year, I started thinking about it, and I probably might write, and I want to write a novel that is like maybe similar, but not like a sequel. So maybe similar, maybe a new novel, but not a sequel.
Excellent. Well, that is good news. So thank you so much, Bo-reum and Shanna, for coming on this A Mighty Blaze interview tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your story and this beautiful book. And you can buy it at A Mighty Blaze Bookshop for sure to help support. And ask any more questions in the comments, and we'll start our own idyllic discussion and get it going. So thank you everyone for watching, and thank you Shanna and Bo-reum for coming tonight. 감사합니다. And
감사합니다.
have a wonderful evening, everybody.